Welcome to another Monday Match Points. I have Ken and Kim and Craig here with me again as we're moving into the middle part of September and the middle part of our volleyball season. And welcome to those of you that have watched before, and welcome to anybody new. This is our, I guess, weekly video series where we try to cover a couple topics that have come up during the volleyball season and try to provide a little bit of clarification on some of those questions that have come up. So before I turn it over to the experts, I want to just go through two things NSAA-wise that have come up over the last couple of weeks. The first being with student match limitations. We have some very specific language in our volleyball manual that talks about how many matches a student can participate in during the week. And also on any given day. Some of that varies based on the type of competition, specifically tournament competition, as opposed to duels and triangulars. So for either the officials or the coaches on this call, if you have questions about what that looks like, it's in the volleyball manual. I'm not going to read it word for word this week. Or contact me at the NSA office. I'd be happy to walk you through that. Just again, a point of clarification, the responsibility for that lies on the school and with the coach. It's not with the official. And so schools really need to be keeping track of that so that their students are staying within that limitation. The second thing that has come up quite often here over the last couple of weeks is during our lower level matches, so our non-varsity competition, is duplicate numbers on jerseys. And real quickly, that is allowed to have, say, 2 number 5s or even 3 number 20s on your roster for, say, a JV or a freshman team, but you can't have those duplicate numbers in the match playing at the same time. So you can only have one of those duplicate numbers actively in the match at a time. I know there's been a little bit of confusion on what the proper procedure is for that. So I just wanted to clear that up. And again, if you have any questions on any of those things, contact me here at the NSA office. I'd be happy to walk you through those things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Craig and let him talk about reserve procedure.
Yes, thanks, Jeff. So this week I even witnessed it myself, kind of how to administer a reserve. And I think one of the confusing things is a lot of these players maybe play club or other sports, which it's a little bit different in high school. So what I wanted to do is kind of just go quickly over how the reserve procedure goes. So just a couple key things. For every term of service, each player gets 1 reserve. So that basically means that if one player serves or goes back to serves, throws the balls up and drops it, she gets 1 more reserve. And then let's say she scores a point and then another player would come in for her in that same service rotation, then that other player would also get another reserve. So that's, I think, one of the key things as far as the reserve is making sure they only get 1 per term of service. Now, the 2 key components of a reserve are this. It's service attempt, which is basically swinging at the ball, and player contact. So basically the reason that you have to have the and on both of those, because let's say, for example, you throw the ball up and she swings at it and totally misses it and drops to the floor, she would get a reserve on that. However, if she would throw the ball up, totally misses it and hits her shoulder, that one would not be a reserve because she attempted to serve it. So that's, I think, really key with that. Another thing is, here's another good example, is that let's say you go back and you beckon for serve and they realize it's the wrong server. So that wrong server could actually throw the ball up and either catch it or drop it. And then you as the official would immediately beckon for the second serve. But if the right server goes back and serves it within that 5 seconds, it's okay. So that's one thing that I learned. Now, here's 2 things I would challenge each of you to do is go to the rule book on page 35, which is 815 and 816. Read those because it talks about this, as well as go to the casebook, which is on page 29 of the casebook. And it gives you some really good examples of how the reserve works. So that's really just kind of what I want to go over with the reserve. Kim, do you guys want to add anything to that?
Just in regards to the sequence, if they throw the ball up and drop it, that is another tweet to let them know that they can, it would be a replay and then serve again.
Correct. Yep. And just one other thing I'd like to add is they can't ask for a timeout or a substitution or a service check. You can't ask for any of those during the reserve. So that's another thing I think a lot of people sometimes do.
All right, Craig, that's good information. Thank you. Ken, you want to talk about substitutions?
Sure. So substitutions can only happen during a dead ball. And, and a dead ball means once the R1 has given the signal to blown the whistle and given the signal to serve, that ball is live, even though contact hasn't been made. So the substitution has to happen during a dead ball. And the substitution request can come from a coach verbally or using the signal, or it can come from a player just coming to the substitution zone and standing. Those are the three instances. Again, referencing that in the rule book on page 44, it lists those when the sub can take place. So when the substitution, let's say the substitution, the girl comes to the line and you tweet, tweet. This is a double whistle, a tweet, tweet. You're asking for the court from the R1. And so you stand in place. You do not have to move to the other side of the court if the sub is happening over there. You can stand where you are, because hopefully you'll already be away from the court, away from the net. You can stand where you are, and when they're in a legal position, give them permission to enter into the court, and then turn and give to your table the numbers that the substitution. And many times those people are ahead of you and you can hear that, but just make sure the right numbers are recorded. If there's two girls, of course, you know that the second substitution has to be out of the substitution zone until the first one is done. And they too require a beckon in or permission to enter. That happens on the side of the net, or always the outside arm. Happens on the side that the substitution is happening. And so, I mean, again, it can be very efficient because you're not having to move to each side and you're not having to get on the court. We don't want you to get on the court. We certainly want you to be stable, in place, and give your permission to enter. Really good description of that is in the Casebook, pages 76 and 77. It steps through that, just one right after the other, and it explains it really, really well with that. Don't forget then, when both sides, because you could have both sides subbing, you might have to at one point put up your hand and tell the other side to wait just for a second. If they happen to go in before and you didn't notice it, your R1 might whistle and say, go back. Or if they run in and you haven't beckoned them in, you make sure that you're controlling that match, make them come back, beckon them in, and then you can continue to play. When both sides are done and you're sure the bench is ready, you look to your R1 and you give a visible, giving the court back, raise the arm at a 45-degree angle, and give the court back to the R1, and play continues.
Yeah. Hey, Ken, one thing I'd also like to add to that is when you give the court back, always make sure you're giving it back on the outside hand.
Correct.
So
yes.
You're always going to, and it's going to be on the receiving team side. So just always remember it's your outside hand. So if it's on your left-hand side, it's your left hand. If you're standing on the right-hand side, it's your right hand.
Okay. One of the things that makes it efficient is the R2. Please don't keep moving to one side of the court or the other. Stay in position. It just will speed that substitution, make it very efficient for you.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Kim, we turn over to you to talk about centerline violations.
Yes, center line violation. When that happens, the foot needs to be completely over the center line, or the hand needs to be completely over the center line. That is what constitutes a center line violation. So, yeah, with that, it would again be if on the right side they have a center line violation, you make sure to use the outside hand and point to the line of that violation. Now, you do not need to give a number when you have a center line violation. Sometimes coaches ask, who was that on? You can simply say maybe middle, outside, right side. And if you have the number, you can say number 10 was in, completely over the line. But also know if there is a serve that goes under the net during, when the person serves it, that is not a center line violation. That is still a net violation as R1. As R2, making sure you give that information to your R1, but as R1, you are just going to simply go with whatever side wins the ball after that center line violation is called. So you do not point at center line as R1, you just simply award the point. Is there anything that I forgot with any of that, Ken or Craig?
Just one thing I'd like to add with the center line with the foot or the hand is it has to be completely, like all of your hand or your foot has to be on the other side of the net. So if part of it is like shadowing the line, even though your toes may be completely on the other side, if your whole foot is not on the other side or your whole hand, then it's not a center line violation. And any other body part that's over the center line, like let's say your body and your hip or something goes under, then that's bad. So it's just the hand and the foot is what is the two key components for the center line.
Right. So if the knee or the elbow, any part of that is over, any part, then that's a center line violation.
Correct.
And Kim, since you brought it up on the serve, if the ball goes under the net, that's still a net. But during play, if the ball goes under the net, then that is a center line, correct, Kim?
Yes, yes. Yes, so if, yeah, the ball goes under the line, you both point, R1 and R2 point to the middle, yeah, center line violation call.
Only thing I have to add to all the great information that we had today is we mentioned this book a lot. This is the case book for this year. And one thing I guess I have learned in the 3 years that I've been overseeing volleyball for the NSAA is that this book is extremely helpful in actually applying the rules of the sport. It gives you a lot of different situations that come up. You'd be surprised how many specific situations there are in this book. And so for those of you, whether you're a coach or an official, if you have not read this book, would highly suggest you do that. There's a ton of great information in there, and it's only going to help you. I can say that as someone that's continuing to try to learn. I think everyone on the call here today can say that you learn something new almost every week with some of the inquiries that we get. And so this is where we go a lot of the time, is right into this book. So plug for the case book, I guess, as part of our episode today. But appreciate all of your time. I hope everyone has a great week, and we will see you next time.